My amendment, the Libertarian Party amendment, simply seeks to add registered sex offenders and child sex offenders to that list. Now, don't panic. They can still change their gender if they want to, but there's just one or two little hurdles that they have to go through. I hope the chamber agrees. I know the chamber won't. The party of bosses said we're not having any amendments. So good news for all the child sex offenders out there and registered sex offenders out there. They're now free to change their agenda if they feel like it. I move the amendment.
Thank you. Minister.
I thank the Honourable John Ruddock and I thank the House for the agreement to get through these amendments. As we've said, we're not dealing with this, but there are very strict protections in place in relation to this. There are restricted persons, but we are not supporting this amendment.
Okay, thank you. Any further? Oh, Dr. Con.
And, very briefly, the Greens won't be supporting the amendment, but in particular, in my second reading contribution, I called out a phenomenon of opponents to this bill equating trans and gender diverse people somehow with perversion, with being dangerous. It's the kind of language that was used around gay and lesbian people in the 80s. It's horrific. And this amendment is exactly that sort of suggestion. This is some kind of association between people wanting to change their gender being more dangerous because they're sex offenders. We can't support the amendment.
Order.
Because of the suggestion that there's an association between people reasonably wanting to change their gender somehow being perverted or dangerous. Of course, there's really strong existing legislation regarding sex offenders, and that's not the subject of what we're debating today.
Thank you. Well, hang on. Ms Abigail Boyd.
I do hope that the mover of the amendment would explain to us how this amendment isn't making that connection, because I think what we have here is an assumption that...
Not at all.
I will, if I could just as a point of order just ask the member not to speak, especially right next to me, in the middle of me speaking. He will have his moment. The idea that it's this, again, and it comes back to what I was talking about in my secondary contribution as well, this idea that somehow trans people are masquerading to try and get into spaces they're not supposed to be in. And in this case, the assumption I'm drawing, and again, I will wait for the member to either affirm or deny it, is that somehow if you're a sex offender, you're using this, this process to take advantage or to get into spaces where you're not supposed to be. This is absurd. It is absurd. It is taking the most tiny possibility, this what if from out here, this what if a person wants to change their birth certificate in order to get access to a woman's room, or to a woman's space, because these people are somehow unable to just go in there anyway. Like the idea that if you're going to commit a crime, that you would go to all of that trouble just to be able to get into a space you can get into anywhere. It doesn't make any sense. And what it is taking this like tiny little possibility, this little what if, and then blowing it up into being a reason for denying people fundamental rights. It's really offensive. It is. I absolutely support what my colleague said, and we oppose the amendment.
Mr. Ruddock.
Well, look, I wasn't expecting to have to speak again, but I mean, this is in the imagination of the Greens. We've already got a list of about 6 categories, maybe 10 categories of people who there's 1 or 2 extra little hurdles if they decide to change their gender. So all I'm saying is, well, we need to include people on the child sex registry and the sex registry, sex offences registry. Now, look, I mean, there's already some people on there, so what we're saying is people who are on these registries, there is a question mark over them. That's why we've got the registry. So and I'm saying, yes, it is quite possible that some of them, a minority, maybe a very small minority, but some of them will go through this very simple process, because this amendment's going to be rejected. It will be a very simple process to change their gender when they may not actually truly be trans. Anyway, I move the amendment.